everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. Today I'm doing a very self-indulgent video. When I started reading again, in terms of reading fiction, I was reading nonfiction for a long time. In 2021, I set out with one goal, and my goal was to understand my adult reading. What is it that I enjoy in books? What makes my perfect book? And what exactly am I looking for when I am reading a story? I've seen many people do this video, and I decided, why not? It can be my time. I have read over 300 books, I think, since 2021. So I think I have sufficient data to at least start the analysis for what makes a 5-star read for me. I am fully inspired by Meg from Meg with Books. For this video, I made a little list of every 5-star book that I have read over the past 3 years ago, 2 years, but I'm counting this year too. So I started with 2021, and in 2021, I gave 27 books 5 stars. Here are all of the books that I rated 5 stars, and I literally went through my Goodreads and checked to make sure that I stood by that 5-star rating. And if I didn't, or I felt like I needed a reread to 100% be sure, I did not include this on this list. It makes sense to me that in 2021, I had 27 5-star reads because I was still getting familiar with my reading taste and what exactly constituted a 5 stars for me. In 2022, I gave out less 5 stars as I got a little bit more selective with what exactly I consider to be a 5-star read. I had 22 5-star reads. Again, I see the common theme of queer books, romances, we have some fantasy going on, like gothic fantasy, and here and there a horror or a thriller. So don't know what that commonality is. Like, what does The Dragon's Bride have in common with The Diviners? And then here is 2023, your little sneak peek, your little preview into the books that I have given 5 stars so far. I do plan to read at least 40 more books before the year is officially over, but so far I've given out 20 5-star reads, which, considering that I'm going to read 40 more books, this might be my best reading year yet in terms of the number of 5-star books that I have. I think at this point I've gotten more familiar with what works for me and what doesn't. I'm going to try to figure out what exactly do these things have in common. I have 4 categories here. I don't know what the categories are. I'm just going to try to find something that they have in common. And right off the bat, looking at this, I think that supernatural elements of some kind is what I enjoy in my books and my reading. So we're going to say some kind of supernatural element. A monster. So I enjoy books with some kind of supernatural element, and if I go back to my list, what books have that in? Of course, I could pull every single monster romance, but does that count? I don't know. So these Fleeting Shadows for sure I loved because of that supernatural element. I also really loved that it was sapphic and it was so beautifully written. Could beautifully written be some kind of element? I think so, because there's a specific writing style that I like. I won't call it, what is it, purple prose? Not that, but like flowery or beautiful writing. Like, writing style is a big factor for me in whether or not I will enjoy the book. And as you all know, I have DNF books where I'm like, I read the first 2 or 3 pages or the first chapter or 2 and was like, I hate this writing style. I love Fourth Wing. Just saying. Hellbent, I loved because of the whole demon angle. If you know, you know. Sadie, I'm going to put into flowery or beautiful writing. It is very hard hitting, and Sadie resonated with me for a lot of very personal reasons, but I loved Sadie so much, specifically because the writing as well, which was just fantastic, and the audiobook was so good. But I'm not considering format for this. And looking at some of the other books that I have, I realized that there's also a theme of strong women or a powerful female character. And the category for that, I think, makes so much sense for me. And I immediately think of the Jasad heir as going in here. Our main character in these Fleeting Shadows was also strong. I liked her a lot, but I won't put her in multiple categories. It's such a character study. I've said this before and I really enjoyed it. I have to put Malice in beautiful writing as well, just because of the exploration of this character. But we have a revenge plot, and like very much good for her is what I'm getting. So we're gonna say strong women, powerful FMC, or absolutely unhinged. I just love me a complex character. Not always dark, but a fun time is what I'm looking for. I could spend this entire time just moving books into specific categories, but I think I'm getting the general idea of what it is that I enjoy. And that leaves me with our analysis of my love for monster romance and my love for horror. I mean, House at the Bottom of the Lake is a very easy one to analyze. I enjoy beautiful writing. I like not weird stories. I don't always love a weird story, but this was such a unique story that I just really enjoyed it. And you know what? I would also put it at supernatural or magical elements, because how is this house completely intact at the bottom of a lake? And how is it enticing these people? I think that is such an interesting premise. Ali Hazelwood's main characters are like badasses in some way or another. I'm specifically thinking of Love on the Brain with our main character B, who is such a badass. Like, she is amazing and incredible, and I absolutely loved her in this story. Now I'm looking at all of my like queer stories that I've loved, and I think that what they all have in common, like I Wish You All the Best, or The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, or Some Girls Do, Something to Talk About, Red, White, and Royal Blue, aside from them generally being queer books, it's that there's also an exploration of queerness and the character either coming to terms with that aspect of their identity or finding a sense of love and belonging within that community. So I'm going to say, how do I phrase this? It's not coming of age. I'm going to say queerness and exploration of queerness. Maybe some element of like found family. We'll just say found family, queerness, and exploration of queerness. And pretty much every queer book that you see here has some element of that involved. It's either the main point or it is involved with that. And I'm specifically thinking of like, I was gonna Count Your Lucky Stars and Stars Collide. Stars Collide is about our main female character, who's this mega famous pop star, coming to terms with and understanding that she's actually a lesbian and exploring a relationship with another woman, her opening act. Red, White, and Royal Blue are one of our main male characters doesn't know that he's gay. He hasn't explored that part of himself, and he comes to accept that and understand that through his relationship with Henry. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, same thing. I'll leave that at that because I was about to spoil some things for you. But Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is a queer book, and there is a lot of exploration of queerness for our main. There's a lot of exploration of queerness. In looking at this, I call the shadows between us the stars aligned because now if I think I reread that, I'm not sure if I would give it the same, but I just loved it so much for the main reason that we have such a powerful and hilarious female main character. Like, I want to tell you some of the scenes in here that amuse me so much, but I won't because it would spoil the story for you. The Adventures of Amina Al-Sadafi, of course, have to be the same thing because Amina is this badass pirate who has this amazing reputation. Amazing. This hilarious reputation, and she just gets shit done all the time and like lives her life for her on her own terms, and I love that for her. That's what made this story so good for me. What is it about the monster and sci-fi romances that I'm reading that I enjoy, and what is it about the horror that I'm reading that I enjoy? Sour Your Blood, love this book so much, specifically because the writing is so beautiful, although it does have supernatural and magical elements as well. Okay, so if we're looking at my 5-star horror, we have Hunted, we have The Whispering Dead, we have If You See Her. The outliers here are Hunted and The Whispering Dead because the books that I just mentioned, like Horror Store and Craven Manor and Carol Haunt, all have some kind of haunted house or some kind of haunted store. So we're just gonna say haunted building. And if we're looking at our outliers, Hunted, I would actually say, is more of a thriller. And what I enjoyed about this is like the isolated nature of it, the idea of like some kind of survival story. But if I'm thinking about these two stories, The Whispering Dead and Hunted, what they both have in common is some kind of isolated area. Looking at all of my romances, they actually do all have something in common, which I didn't think that they would. Not the monster romances, but like my contemporary romances. And that is that there is some level of emotional depth or exploration going on within the story. So I am gonna have to add emotional depth and complexity. Like yours truly, The Bride Test, Zenny, all of these books are exploring some hard-hitting topic in some way or another. Even Stars Collide in some ways has this level of emotional complexity because one of our main female characters left a relationship that was extremely toxic with a person who hurt her in a lot of emotional ways and was very emotionally manipulative. Okay, Radiant is like an arranged marriage. Prince is royalty. Well, Prince is not a monster romance, so we'll leave that in queerness. The Witches' Wolves is like polyamorous. They happen to run into each other and like have a really great relationship. I have a meeting in 3 minutes and I won't have enough time to analyze this. So we're gonna come back to monster romances. But for you, the only thing that will have changed is the lighting. I rethought the whole forest survival thing and thought isolated survival might make a lot more sense because I do love survival stories like in Hunted and The Woman in Cabin 10 and in These Fleeting Shadows in some way or another. There's some element of survival. And I've been thinking about the romances that I read. And I think that one of the main things that they all have in common is a soft male character. Just someone who loves our female main character or other character super gently and is just very understanding and compassionate and kind. And I think if we're gonna be in that category, I would also say like soulmate. Very loving, very gentle relationships, which is why I tend to like monster romance a lot because a lot of the monsters are like these massive hulking beings, but they are so soft and gentle and kind and loving and compassionate and just like completely there for the female main character. So if we're thinking about examples of this, yes, Radiance absolutely is an arranged marriage, but I love the kind of friends to lovers aspect of it. But our male character and our female character equally are both loving and compassionate and like kind and friendly to each other. In I Married a Minotaur and I Married Wan Jin, we both have two hulking giant beings of male figures, but they both are completely like in love with and care for the women that they marry, their mates. All of these stories give me the same energy of like soulmate type stories. And honestly, the same thing is true for Arjal's Resonance and even in While We Were Dating and in A Soul to Touch. While We Were Dating isn't a monster romance, it's a contemporary romance, but it still has the same energy of our male character is just 100% so supportive of the woman that he's with. A Soul to Touch is super, super, super smutty. Like, oh my gosh, most of this book is actually just porn. But our main hero, again, just exists for our female main character. Of course, he has his life, but he finds a lot of purpose and fulfillment in taking care of his mate. The same thing is true with I Married a Naga. Obsessed male character. That is what I like. Soft boy. Fire in his eyes and fire in her eyes and fire in his blood, I would honestly also class as survival stories. I wouldn't call either of our heroes in this book soft, but it takes place in the apocalypse, and maybe I just like an apocalyptic romance. So we'll keep this in survival. There's some element of survival going on. Project Hail Mary, it's gonna be odd because it's one of the few sci-fi books, in fact, the only sci-fi book that's not a sci-fi romance that I have like completely loved. But I would also put this in Found Family. Listen, if you know, you know. And honestly, I would also put this in survival because it is a survival story. It's a space survival story. I mean, The Rise of Kyoshi is undoubtedly badass female main character. This is also sapphic, so I'm gonna put it in queer because she dates her bodyguard, but her bodyguard is also a bad bitch. So Demon Lover is a monster romance that I would also class as emotional depth and complexity. This is a story with a lot of emotional depth. It's very sad. It's not for everybody. I don't think everything was handled perfectly, but I did really enjoy this book, and we of course have a soft male character. But that leaves me with 1, 2, 3, and 4 different monster romances that I wouldn't necessarily class as a soft boy. In fact, I would class almost all of these men as dominating in one way or another. Deceived by the Gargoyles and The Witch's Wolves both are polyamorous romances. They're poly, 3 people, 2 men, 1 woman. The Dragon's Bride and Titan both are very smutty, like dominating men. And the only thing that I think that these 4 books have in common is smut. Really good, really great, like just top tier. You know, we're here for what we're here for. And how would I class that? I don't think that needs its own separate category. I just wanted to like figure out what exactly do all 4 of these books have in common. We're gonna leave that as what it is. That's exactly why I enjoy those stories. So if we take an analysis of like what I've done so far, I think I have pulled out what I enjoyed in these books and got a good sense of what works for me and what doesn't. So we have supernatural or magical elements, which in some way or another, pretty much all of these books outside of the contemporary romances have some kind of supernatural or magical element. Flowery or beautiful writing, all of these books have writing that I enjoyed in some capacity or another, with the shadows between us being perhaps questionable, but beautiful writing for me is always top for whether or not I enjoy a book. It doesn't have to be flowery, but it does have to be enjoyable to me, and I look for something that is very quote unquote well written. Strong, badass women, obviously. Queerness, I am happy with. I think I pulled out more than just I like gay books. I like books where the character is exploring their sexuality in some way or another, whether that's actually exploring their sexuality via the relationships that they have, or coming to accept themselves and their queerness and how they move through life within that identity. Haunted buildings or ghosts, you know, I think that goes also with like supernatural and magical elements. If something is haunted, if there is some kind of ghost, even to some extent, if the ghosts are scary, but there's some element of like goofiness, I think these books also have that in common. Love that. Isolated survival, be that the apocalypse, be that isolated setting, forest, minimal supplies, middle of the ocean, up in space, some kind of isolated nature where the main character now has to survive. If there's romance in there, great. If there's found family or friendship in there, awesome. But the isolation is what kind of gets my heart racing, like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? Emotional depth and complexity. I didn't want to be on this list because I always say I'm a soft girl. I don't want my books to make me cry. And it's true. Most of these books have not made me cry except for Sadie, again, very personal reasons, but the emotional depth and complexity does make me feel something, and I think evoking that strong emotion does make the book more enjoyable for me. Again, I'm not trying to cry, but I would like my character to have some kind of struggle that they're trying to overcome. And then soft male characters and soulmates. I love me a soft boy. All of these romance books are very, very spicy, except for Fangs. So I love me a soft boy, and I like a story with a lot of spice in it. Not always. I have to believe the relationship, which is why there's the caveat of soulmate. Do I think these characters work well together and have a positive dynamic? Yes, I want the main male character to worship the ground that she walks on, but he doesn't only exist to please her. He should feel like a fully fleshed out person of his own with his own issues. For example, in I Married Won Jin is dealing with the repercussions of an injury that he got as a child and how he has been bullied and isolated and ridiculed for his entire life. And in I Married a Minotaur, we have our main male character who is dealing with an impending war on his planet. In A Soul to Touch, our main male character is dying. That's not a spoiler, that's in the summary. So I still want these main male characters to have their own struggles, their own issues, and be fleshed out people. But when it comes to how they treat their women, it is with the utmost respect and love and compassion. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you aren't already, and if you have any recommendations for me based on my 5-star interest or what I look for in a 5-star book, let me know in the comments below. I will happily read that, and I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye!